Daniel was not rich. He didn't live in a big house or drive a fancy car, but he had something many people didn't: a kind heart. Every weekend, he went to the local children's hospital to visit the kids who were sick. He didn't work there. He wasn't paid. He just showed up with books, funny stories, and his warm smile. And the kids loved him for it. There was one boy, Milo, who became Daniel's favorite. Milo was only 6 years old, but had spent most of his life in a hospital bed. He had cancer that medicine couldn't fix. Some days Milo would be full of energy, laughing and asking 100 questions. Other days, he was too tired to even lift his head. But no matter how he felt, he always waited for Daniel. Daniel and Milo talked about everything: stars, dinosaurs, superheroes, and space rockets. Daniel even brought paints and small rocks for Milo to decorate. "These are my power stones," Milo would say proudly. He believed they brought good luck. He made one for every nurse and doctor. And one day, he made a bracelet just for Daniel. It wasn't much, just some string and colorful plastic beads. Some of the beads had tiny letters on them. Together, they spelled Milo's hero. When he handed it to Daniel, the boy said, "Wear it when you're with important people, okay? So I can be with you too." Daniel smiled but felt his throat tighten. "I promise," he said, putting the bracelet on his wrist. A few weeks later, Milo passed away. His bed was empty the next time Daniel came to visit. The nurses didn't need to say anything. Daniel sat in the hallway and cried silently. The bracelet stayed on his wrist. He never took it off. Months passed. Daniel kept volunteering. Then one day, something unexpected happened. He received a formal letter in the mail, written in gold-embossed ink. It was from a luxury charity foundation that supported the children's hospital. They were inviting him to their annual Gala event, a fancy night where rich people came to donate money and show off. Daniel was surprised. He wasn't rich or important. Why would they invite someone like him? He almost didn't go. But one nurse convinced him. "Milo would want you to be there," she said. So Daniel borrowed a black suit from his neighbor. It was a little tight in the shoulders, but it looked clean and proper. He polished his old shoes until they shined. But one thing he didn't change: the bracelet. Milo's bracelet stayed on his wrist. When he arrived at the grand ballroom, he was stunned. There were chandeliers, gold-covered tables, and people dressed in designer clothes. Men in tuxedos, women in glittering gowns. Laughter, music, and soft clinking of expensive glasses filled the room. Daniel walked in, quietly, staying near the edge. He smiled politely and tried not to touch anything. It didn't take long before people noticed him. One woman gave him a quick glance and whispered to her friend, "Who invited him?" Another man looked down at Daniel's wrist and raised an eyebrow. "Is that a child's bracelet?" he said, loud enough to be heard. Daniel tried to ignore it. He walked to the corner and stood quietly, holding a glass of water. He watched as people laughed and took pictures in front of giant banners that said, "For the children." And all he could think was, would Milo have enjoyed this? Then, a tall man in a white suit and a woman with diamonds around her neck walked up to him. They smiled, but it didn't reach their eyes. "What an interesting accessory," the woman said, pointing at the bracelet. Daniel replied softly, "It was a gift from a boy I used to visit at the hospital." "Oh," the man said, chuckling. "How sweet." They walked away laughing. Daniel looked down at the bracelet. For the first time since he wore it, he felt out of place. He turned toward the exit, thinking maybe it was better to leave. But before he could take a step, someone touched his arm. It was Clara, a nurse from the hospital who was also invited. She gave him a small smile. "I see you're still wearing it," she said. "Always," Daniel said. Suddenly, the music stopped. The host walked up to the stage and tapped the microphone. "Tonight we celebrate those who make a difference," he said. "And I'd like to welcome a special guest, someone who gives his time, his heart, and his soul to the children." The host looked at a piece of paper. Then, he said the name. "Mr. Daniel Harris, would you please come up?" Daniel froze. He hadn't prepared anything. He wasn't expecting this, but Clara gave him a soft push. "Go," she said. "For Milo." Daniel walked slowly to the stage. Under the bright lights, in front of all the rich guests who had mocked him just moments ago, and on his wrist, Milo's bracelet glowed in the spotlight. What he said next would shake the entire room. Daniel stood frozen on the stage. Hundreds of eyes stared at him. People in suits and glittering dresses held their champagne glasses still, waiting. The room was so quiet that even the soft buzz of the lights felt loud. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't a public speaker. He wasn't used to standing in the spotlight. All he had ever done was sit beside sick children, talk to them, listen to their stories, and try to make them smile. That didn't feel like something big. But then, he looked down at his wrist. Milo's bracelet. Bright, colorful, handmade. So small, yet full of meaning. He took a deep breath and walked toward the microphone. His voice, though nervous at first, was soft and real. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight," he said. "I'm not a doctor. I'm not a rich man. I just visited the children. One of them. His name was Milo." A few people shifted in their seats. A couple rolled their eyes. But Clara, standing at the back, watched closely, her phone in her hand. He was 6 years old. He had cancer. He was scared. He was in pain. But every time I walked into the room, he would smile. He had a huge imagination. He said the fourth stand was a spaceship. He believed he could fly. Some people smiled. Others looked bored. Daniel continued. "He made me this bracelet." He raised his wrist so everyone could see it. "He told me, wear it when you're with important people, so I can be with you too." A few laughs came from the crowd. Someone whispered, "He's joking, right?" Daniel heard them, but ignored it. "I promised him I would wear it, always, so tonight I wore it, because this room is full of important people. And I wanted him to be here with me." Silence followed. For a long moment, no one said anything. A soft clink of a fork dropping on a plate echoed through the room. One man near the front crossed his arms and muttered, "Is this a speech or a sob story?" Another guest, a woman with expensive earrings, whispered, "We didn't come here for this." Daniel stepped back, thinking he had made a mistake. Maybe they didn't want to hear about children dying. Maybe this wasn't the place for real feelings. He nodded once, gave a small smile, and said quietly, "Thank you," before walking off the stage. A few polite claps followed, but most people didn't even look at him. They turned back to their meals, their drinks, their jokes. Daniel returned to his spot near the wall. He felt smaller than before, like he didn't belong. He stared down at the floor, then at the bracelet. Had he embarrassed Milo's memory? Clara found him a few minutes later. "That was brave," she said. "I think it was stupid," Daniel answered. "No, it was real." Clara showed him her phone. She had recorded the whole speech and already posted it online. "People need to hear this," she said. "Not everyone in this room has a heart, but out there, someone will listen." Daniel gave a tired smile, but didn't feel hopeful. Nearby, the same woman who had mocked his bracelet earlier pulled out her phone. She snapped a photo of Daniel standing awkwardly with his water glass, his bracelet in view. She posted it on her social page with the caption, "Who let the preschool teacher in?" Others began sharing it too, laughing, making jokes, but what none of them knew was that Clara's video was already gaining attention. A few hours later, while Daniel sat at home, removing the tight suit, he got a message on his phone. 1,000 views, 500 likes. Comments, 100 plus. He clicked open the comments. "This made me cry. Bless you, Daniel. That boy's bracelet meant something. You're a good man. Who is this guy? We need more like him. My daughter died in that hospital. Thank you for remembering these children." Daniel blinked in surprise. More messages came in. People from all over the country. Parents, teachers, nurses, even strangers who had never stepped into a hospital were moved. While some at the gala had laughed at him, the world outside saw the truth. A man who kept a promise to a child. Back at the gala, things continued like nothing had happened. The music picked up again. Dancers returned to the floor. Rich donors made their speeches about building new hospital wings, about making a difference. But no one mentioned Daniel's name again. They didn't know what was growing online. They didn't know the storm that was coming, but Daniel, he didn't care about fame or praise. He just looked at Milo's bracelet and whispered, "I kept my promise, little buddy." And far away in a quiet graveyard, under a small stone, that read Milo, the boy who dreamed of stars. The wind passed gently, as if it heard. The next morning, Daniel woke up early. He had work like any other day. He made coffee, fed his cat, and checked his phone out of habit. He wasn't ready for what he saw. His phone screen was filled with notifications. Hundreds of them. Messages. Comments, likes, shares. At first, he thought there was a mistake. Then he saw Clara's video, his speech from the gala. It had gone viral overnight. Millions had seen it. The title read, "Man honors dying child at fancy gala." Then they laughed. At him. There were comments from all over the world. "I couldn't stop crying. This man is a real hero. That bracelet means more than any diamond in that room." He stood up for a child's memory in front of the rich and heartless. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the screen. He didn't know how to react. He had only gone to the gala because he made a promise to Milo. Now, people were calling him brave, kind, inspiring. He didn't feel like any of those things. He just missed a little boy who used to laugh about space rockets. A knock came at the door. It was Clara. "Have you seen it?" she asked, smiling wide. Yeah. I just did," Daniel replied. "You're everywhere. News channels, blogs, social media, everyone's talking about you." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Clara sat down and looked at him. "I know, but sometimes the world needs reminders, and you gave them one." Later that day, a news reporter called Daniel and asked for an interview. He was nervous, but Clara encouraged him. So he agreed. In the interview, Daniel talked about Milo, how they met, their friendship, and the bracelet. He told the story simply, with honesty. No acting. No big words. When asked about the people who mocked him at the gala, Daniel paused. Then he said, "It wasn't about them. It was about keeping my promise to a little boy who believed his bracelet would bring him to places he'd never see." The reporter got emotional. The video interview was shared by more news sites. People started sending Daniel letters, emails, and even small gifts, thank you cards, drawings, and handmade bracelets from kids across the country. He opened one letter from a woman who wrote, "My son passed away last year. Your story reminded me that he's not forgotten." Another came from a child who said, "I'm sick too, but I want to make bracelets for heroes like you." Daniel was overwhelmed. He had never imagined something so small, just a promise to. A sick child could touch so many lives, but while the world outside was cheering for him, the people behind the gala weren't happy. The video had exposed their shallow behavior. The laughter, the whispers, the photo mocking Daniel. It all made them look cruel and fake. Inside their offices, the gala organizers were angry. They called it a disaster. One of them said, "We invited him to be polite, not to steal." The spotlight. The woman who posted the mocking photo deleted it quietly. But by then, screenshots had already spread online. Her name and her cruel comment were shared with the world. She lost thousands of followers overnight. Another sponsor of the gala, a wealthy businessman who had watched Daniel's video, called the organizers and said, "If this is how you treat people who care, I'm pulling my funding." And he did. He donated the money instead directly to the children's hospital in Alza, The did. Daniel's name. Daniel didn't know any of this yet. He was still reading kind messages from strangers and wondering if Milo would have been proud. That night, he went for a walk. It was cool outside, and the stars were out. He looked up and whispered, "You're famous now, Milo." As he walked, people began recognizing him. One woman stopped him with tears in her eyes and said, "My daughter had cancer. You spoke for all of us." Another man patted his back and said, "Thank you for reminding us what matters." Daniel didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to this attention. But he smiled and nodded. He was just glad people remembered Milo. Meanwhile, Clara continued to update him on what was happening. The hospital had received hundreds of bracelet donations. Kids from different schools were making them to honor children in hospitals. Some were even sold online to raise money. People started calling it the #Milo's Bracelet movement. A small act of love had become something much bigger. But as the love grew stronger in the world, the elite Gala members grew more bitter. They didn't like losing control of the story, and soon they would try to shut it down. But they had already lost the one thing they cared about most, the respect of the people. And Daniel? He didn't care about their fancy dinners anymore. He had kept his promise, and now the whole world knew why that little bracelet mattered. Clara's video of Daniel's speech kept growing. In just 2 days, it had crossed over 5 million views. People from different countries were watching it, crying, and sharing it. News channels played short clips. Famous people began commenting, calling Daniel a true example of kindness. But Daniel stayed quiet. He didn't care about going viral. He still wore Milo's bracelet every day. For him, it wasn't about being popular. It was still about a little boy who believed in magic. However, not everyone was happy. The organizers of the luxury gala were in a panic. They didn't like how the video made them look. Some guests were caught in the background, clearly laughing and mocking Daniel during his speech. A few well-known faces were now facing online anger. One of the event's top organizers called Clara and spoke sharply. "You must take the video down," he said. "It's hurting our reputation." Clara was shocked. "Are you serious? People love it. They're donating more to the hospital now." "It's not good for our image," the man said coldly. And Daniel should not speak publicly again. He was not invited to make a speech. Clara hung up, angry and disgusted. She told Daniel everything. "They want to hide what you did." She said, "They want people to forget." Daniel sat quietly, then looked at her. "I don't care what they want. I made a promise. And Milo deserves to be remembered." Word began to spread that Daniel had been told not to return to future events. Many people were shocked. One mother of a cancer survivor wrote on her blog, "How can they ban a man who speaks with love, but allow people who wear diamonds and laugh at dying children?" The story became bigger. More people started speaking out. Nurses, hospital staff, and even other volunteers shared their stories of Daniel's kindness. One man shared, "My son couldn't sleep unless Daniel came in and read him a bedtime story." Suddenly, something powerful began to happen. People started making bracelets, simple ones, just like Milo's. They wore them to school, to work, and even to meetings. They posted photos online with the hashtag Milo's Bracelet. A teacher in Canada showed her class the video and helped the kids make their own bracelets for children in hospitals. A firefighter in Australia posted a picture wearing a bracelet during a rescue mission, writing, "For Milo, for all the brave little fighters out there." Soon, thousands of photos flooded the internet. Daniel couldn't believe it. His small act was now a movement. Even better people started sending donations to the children's hospital. Not to the Gala Fund, but directly. Letters arrived with the donations, saying things like, "This is for the real heroes, not the ones in suits. Milo's story changed me. Please give this in Daniel's name." The hospital board was amazed. In just 1 week, they received more money than the gala usually raised in a whole year. And because of this success, the hospital made a big decision. They would name a new children's playroom after Milo. They called Daniel into the hospital. One morning, when he walked in, the staff and volunteers clapped and cheered. On the wall, a shiny plaque read, "Milo's room, a place of hope and imagination." Daniel couldn't speak. He looked at the wall, then at Clara, and felt tears in his eyes. He would have loved this, he whispered. That day, the hospital offered Daniel a permanent position in their community outreach program. He would work with volunteers, speak at schools, and continue sharing hope, just like he did with Milo. Daniel accepted. But he made one request. "Let me still wear the bracelet," he said with a smile. "Always," Clara replied. Together, they began visiting local schools. Daniel spoke to students about kindness, promises, and how small things can change lives. He told them Milo's story, not as a sad tale, but as a reminder of love, hope, and courage. In one school, a little girl gave Daniel a handmade card. It said, "Thank you for showing us what love really looks like." While all this was happening, the gala organizers tried to fix their image. They released a statement saying Daniel had misunderstood and that they always supported volunteers. But no one believed them. A well-known documentary team even started filming a short series called The Bracelet that spoke louder than money. It focused on Daniel's journey, the gala's failure, and how kindness won. Back in his small apartment, Daniel placed the card from the little girl next to Milo's photo. He lit a candle and sat silently. He whispered, "See what you started, little buddy?" Milo was gone, but his spirit lived in every bracelet, every donation, and every smile Daniel saw. The people who laughed at him were being forgotten, but the boy who gave a simple gift, he was being remembered by the entire world. The rich people behind the gala were not happy. Their photos were still being shared online, showing their fake smiles and rude behavior. People were angry at them. A few of them even deleted their social media accounts after receiving thousands of angry comments. They felt their power slipping away. Inside their offices, the main organizers sat around a long glass table. The leader, Mr. Grant, slammed his hand down. "We have to stop this man," he growled. "He made us look like fools." "But we can't attack him directly," one woman said. "Everyone loves him now." Another added, "His story is everywhere. Even children are wearing those bracelets." The news channels won't stop talking about him. They all looked at each other. Their faces were full of fear and anger. "Then we ruin the story," Mr. Grant said coldly. "We say the video was fake. We say he used the child for attention." That's exactly what they tried to do. They called a small press meeting and said, "The video was edited to make our guests look bad. The man who spoke is not a staff member. He was never supposed to be on stage." But no one believed them. People already saw the truth. Millions had watched Daniel's full speech. They had seen how nervous, kind, and honest he was. No amount of lies could change their minds now. And just when the organizers thought things couldn't get worse, something big happened. One of the main sponsors of the gala, a powerful billionaire, saw all the drama. He had quietly watched Daniel's story unfold. He had a daughter who once stayed in that same hospital. She survived, thanks to the love of volunteers like Daniel. The billionaire called the gala organizers. "I want to speak with Daniel," he said. They were shocked. "Why?" Mr. Grant asked. "Because he did something none of you could," the billionaire replied. He reminded the world what this is really about, the children. Then the billionaire made a huge decision. He pulled all of his future funding from the luxury gala. Instead, he donated the money directly to the hospital. But more than that, he also announced that he wanted Daniel to lead a new global project, one that would focus on real people, real kindness, and real change. When Daniel got the message, he didn't believe it at first. A private car came to pick him up." Clara went with him. They were taken to a tall glass building, where they met the billionaire in person. He was kind, soft-spoken, and full of respect. "I watched your speech," the man said to Daniel, "and I cried. Not many people have the courage to do what you did." Daniel was nervous but honest. "I wasn't trying to be brave. I just made a promise to a child." "That's exactly why you're the right person for this," the man said with a smile. He explained the project. It would be called Hearts in Action. It would create small kindness centers in hospitals across different countries. Places where children could play, learn, and feel hope, just like Milo once did. And Daniel would help lead it. At first, Daniel didn't know what to say. He had never done anything like this. But then he remembered all the letters from parents, the drawings from children, and the bracelets mailed from all over the world. He thought of Milo's bright eyes, his space stories, and the day he gave him the bracelet. So Daniel looked up and said, "Yes, I'll do it." Meanwhile, back at the Gala world, things were falling apart. Other donors followed the billionaire's lead. More people stopped giving money to the luxury events. Instead, they started supporting Daniel's project. The organizers tried to fight back. They held another gala, this time with even more diamonds, fireworks, and music. But people didn't care anymore. The heart was gone. They had lost the people's trust. One of the guests at the new Gala secretly filmed the event. In the video, someone said, "We should have never let that volunteer speak. He ruined everything." The video was leaked. And once again, the world saw their true faces. Daniel, on the other hand, was becoming a symbol of hope. He visited more schools, more hospitals, and even gave a small speech at the United Nations, where he wore Milo's bracelet proudly on his wrist. When reporters asked why he still wore it every day, Daniel simply said, "Because he's still with me. He's part of everything I do." A mother in Brazil sent a message to Daniel's page. "My son has cancer. But after watching your story, he asked me to help him make a bracelet. He said he wants to give it to a nurse, just like Milo gave one to you." Daniel read the message and smiled. His heart felt full. The people who once laughed at him were now silent. But the child they ignored, the one they thought was just a story, was now changing the world. One bracelet at a time, the story of Daniel and Milo's bracelet had now become more than just a video. It had turned into something powerful, a movement of kindness spreading across the world. Everywhere Daniel went, people stopped him. Not to ask for autographs, not to take pictures, but to say thank you. Thank you for reminding them that small things, like a handmade bracelet from a sick child, could mean more than diamonds, money, or fame. People were no longer just talking. They were doing. In schools, students were making bracelets in art class. Not for fashion, but to send to children in hospitals. They wrote little notes like, "Stay strong, and you're not alone." Teachers shared photos online with the tag hashtag Milo's bracelet, and those pictures spread across the internet like wildfire. In businesses, workers wore simple string bracelets to meetings. A CEO in Japan said, "This reminds me to be kind to my staff." A nurse in Italy said, "This gives me strength before long shifts." Even in war zones, soldiers posted pictures with bracelets made by children. One soldier wrote, "We carry these into danger, not for protection, but for purpose." People were no longer interested in fancy galas. They wanted real stories, real change, real hope. Daniel stayed humble. He still lived in his small apartment. He still fed his cat every morning. But his days were now full of travel, speeches, hospital visits, and hugs from children. One day, a famous journalist came to interview him. "You never planned this," she said. Daniel smiled. "I only planned to keep a promise." "Do you realize how much money this movement has raised?" Daniel shrugged. "Enough to build playrooms, music corners, reading areas, and dream rooms in more than 40 hospitals. And we're just getting started." The movement was now officially named the Milo Project. It focused on spreading love and support to children in hospitals through kindness, creativity, and connection. And Daniel was leading it. Clara, who had always stood by his side, now worked full-time as the project coordinator. She organized school programs, volunteer drives, and bracelet shipments. She was the heart behind the scenes. Together, they traveled to small villages and big cities. Wherever they went, children ran to them, holding up bracelets and signs with Milo's name on them. Some wore superhero costumes, some were in wheelchairs. But all of them smiled when they saw Daniel. At one event, a little girl stood up during question time. "My brother died last year," she said quietly. "He had cancer. I didn't get to say goodbye. But I made this for you." She handed Daniel a bracelet made of paper, carefully folded. Daniel took it with both hands and put it on his wrist, next to Milo's. "Thank you," he said, kneeling to her level. "Now your brother is with us too." The room was silent. Then everyone clapped, not because it was a performance, but because it was real. Meanwhile, more and more people joined the Milo Project. Artists painted murals of hope on hospital walls. Musicians wrote songs for the children. Even people who once worked for the luxury Gala now asked to volunteer. One of the former Gala guests, the same woman who once mocked Daniel's bracelet, posted an apology online. In her message she wrote, "I judged something I didn't understand. I saw the bracelet and thought it was silly. I see now. It was the most valuable thing in the room." Daniel never replied to her message. He wasn't bitter. He didn't need to be. The world had already answered. Later that month, Daniel received a letter from a small African country. Inside it was a photo of a hospital ward, filled with children holding up colorful bracelets. A note came with it. "We don't have much, but your story reached us. We now have Milo's Corner here, where kids can dream." Daniel sat quietly, holding the letter. Clara watched him from across the room. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. I can't believe all this came from a 6-year-old boy and a bracelet." "That's the beauty of it," Clara said. "It wasn't about size. It was about love." That night, Daniel visited Milo's grave again. He placed a flower, then gently touched the bracelet on his wrist. "You did this," he whispered. "You showed the world what really matters." A soft breeze passed over him, like an invisible hand gently brushing his shoulder. The sky was full of stars. And Daniel smiled, knowing Milo was up there, smiling too. A boy who never left the hospital had now touched the hearts of millions, and it all began with a simple bracelet worn by a man who refused to take it off. Daniel stood at the edge of a massive hall. It was bright, grand, and filled with people from around the world, leaders, artists, teachers, doctors, and even a few presidents. Flags of many nations hung from the ceiling. Photographers clicked their cameras. News reporters whispered into microphones that this wasn't a gala. It wasn't about fashion or showing off wealth. This was the Global Summit for Kindness and Humanity, an international event held once a year. It gathered the most inspiring people to share ideas, stories, and projects that changed the world. And now, Daniel was one of the speakers. He stood near the entrance, nervous, looking down at his worn shoes. He didn't wear a fancy suit. He didn't come with a team. But on his wrist were dozens of colorful bracelets handmade by children from around the world. And right in the middle was Milo's bracelet, still shining. Clara stood beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" Daniel gave a shaky smile. "I still don't know why they chose me." "They chose you because you reminded the world how to care." A voice echoed through the giant speakers. "Now please welcome Daniel Harris, founder of the Milo Project." People clapped as Daniel walked slowly to the center stage. His heart was beating fast. But he took a deep breath and looked at the audience. Thousands of eyes stared back at him, curious, respectful, silent. He began to speak. "I'm not rich," he said simply. "I don't have power. I don't run a country or a company. I was just a hospital volunteer." He paused, holding up his wrist. This bracelet was made by a 6-year-old boy named Milo. He was sick. He was dying. But he gave me this and said, "Wear it when you're with important people, so I can be with you too." A few people wiped their eyes. I wore it to a fancy gala once. People laughed at me. They thought it was a toy. But what they didn't know was that this bracelet had more love in it than all the diamonds in that room. A wave of emotion spread through the hall. Daniel shared how he had been shamed then, how that moment became the beginning of something bigger. He talked about the schools making bracelets, the hospitals building Milo rooms, and the love letters from all over the world. "I didn't build this alone," Daniel said. "The children did. The parents, the teachers, the people who believe that kindness still matters. We all did this together." When he finished, the hall was silent for a few seconds. Then a standing ovation. Everyone rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even crying. Clara was crying too, standing at the side of the stage with pride in her eyes. Reporters rushed to post Daniel's speech. The video reached millions in hours. Comments poured in again. "Best speech of the summit. He didn't come with power, he came with heart. I'm making a bracelet tonight." Daniel sat back down, overwhelmed, but happy. Later that day, leaders from different countries asked to meet him. They wanted to bring the Milo project to their own hospitals. One woman, a health minister from India, said, "Our children need more than medicine. They need hope. You've shown us that." At dinner, Daniel sat with people who once lived in poverty, war zones, or illness, but now ran life-changing programs. They talked, laughed, and shared their dreams. And not once did anyone laugh at his bracelets. Back home, news of the summit reached every corner of the internet. Photos of Daniel wearing dozens of bracelets went viral. Children began calling them hero ropes. Even cartoon shows created characters based on Milo, a little boy who helped others through kindness. And the rich people from the original gala? They watched from their screens in silence. The man who had once mocked Daniel now faced backlash at his own company. The woman who posted the rude photo was asked to step down from her social media brand. Their power faded while Daniel's story continued to rise. In one school, a student was asked to choose a hero for a project. He stood up and said, "I choose Daniel Harris because he made the world better," without ever asking for anything back. One morning, Daniel received a surprise letter. It was from the President of the United Nations. The letter said, "Mr. Harris, we thank you for proving that one act of love can change the world. You are always welcome at our table." Daniel smiled, folded the letter carefully, and placed it inside a small wooden box along with Milo's drawing, a photo, and the first bracelet. That night, as stars filled the sky, Daniel sat on his apartment roof with Clara. "I can't believe this is my life," he whispered. Clara laughed. "You just kept a promise." The rest, the world followed. And far above, under the blanket of stars, a boy named Milo surely smiled. His wish had come true. He had made it to the most important room in the world. And he did it through the wrist of the man who never let him be forgotten. The morning was quiet. A soft breeze moved through the trees, and sunlight came in through the window of Daniel's small apartment. The world had changed, but his life was still simple. He still made his own coffee. He still fed his cat Whiskers, who now had fans online too. But something was different today. Daniel walked over to his desk, where a wooden box rested. Inside it were things he never wanted to lose: Milo's drawing of a rocket ship, a photo of the two of them, and of course, the first bracelet. The one that started everything. Daniel touched the beads gently. They were old now, a little worn, but still bright. Still full of meaning. He smiled. That day he had a plan. He was going to visit Milo's grave again, like he did every month. But today was special. It was exactly 2 years since Milo had passed away. 2 years since the boy gave him a simple gift that had changed the world. Before leaving, Daniel opened a small envelope on his table. It was filled with letters. Not printed ones, handwritten, with shaky words and colorful crayon drawings. They had come from kids in hospitals, kids who had watched his speech, kids who had sent bracelets of their own. He picked one letter from a girl named Layla. It read, "Dear Daniel, I have cancer like Milo, but I'm not scared because of your story. I wear my bracelet every day. My dream is to meet you. Love, Layla, age 7. Daniel folded the letter and placed it in his coat pocket. He had already spoken with Layla's parents. He was planning to visit her next month. He locked the door behind him and walked toward the cemetery. The sky was clear. Birds flew overhead. People on the street waved at him, not because he was famous, but because they felt connected to his story. He was part of their lives now. When he reached Milo's grave, he knelt down. The headstone was simple, just how Milo's parents had wanted. It said, "Milo James, our star boy, you taught us to dream." Daniel placed a small bouquet of flowers beside it. Then he gently took off one of the newer bracelets on his wrist and laid it on the stone dot. It had traveled across the world. It had been touched by presidents, worn by soldiers, blessed by priests, and held by thousands of children. Now it would rest with the boy who made it all possible. "You did it, buddy," Daniel said softly. "You helped more people than any of us ever could." He sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind move through the trees. After some time, a group of children and parents arrived nearby. They were part of a local hospital's art group. They had heard about Milo's story and came to pay respects. Each child carried a bracelet they had made. One by one, they came to the grave and gently placed their bracelets beside Daniel's. The colors shined under the sunlight: red, yellow, blue, green, pink. A rainbow of love and hope. Milo's grave was now covered in bracelets from children he never met, but who felt like they knew him. A mother stood beside Daniel and whispered, "He changed my daughter's life. She believes in heroes again." Daniel didn't speak. He just nodded, his eyes full. Later that evening, back at home, Daniel opened his email and saw hundreds of new messages. Some were from schools starting new kindness programs. Others were from hospitals asking for help building more Milo rooms. One message stood out. It was from a school in a poor village, far away. The teacher wrote, "We don't have internet. We heard your story through a radio. Our students made bracelets with string and paper. They all said, 'This is for Milo. We may be far, but we are with you.'" Daniel replied with a simple message, "And I am with you too." That night, Daniel sat on the rooftop of his building. Clara joined him, bringing 2 cups of tea. They sat in silence, watching the stars. "I've been thinking," Daniel said. "Maybe it's time for someone else to carry this forward. Maybe some of these kids will grow up and lead the project." "Someday," Clara smiled. "Maybe, but no matter what happens, they'll always remember who started it with a promise and a bracelet." Daniel looked at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Milo." Up in the stars, it felt like someone was listening. The world had once shamed Daniel for wearing a child's bracelet, but that same bracelet had gone on to build hospitals, inspire millions, and remind humanity of the most important thing: kindness. It didn't come in gold or silver. It came in string, beads, and the heart of a little boy who never got to grow up, but who changed the world anyway. And Daniel? He never stopped wearing that bracelet, not even once.